Hey everyone, welcome back to another night in the dark. Tonight I've got 3 chilling stories sent in by people just like you who've come face to face with things that can't be explained. These are true stories, the kind that creep up on you when you're alone, when the world is quiet and the shadows feel alive. So grab your headphones, turn off the lights, and settle in. Because what you're about to hear might make you double-check your locks tonight. Our first story comes from Emily, a 22-year-old from a small town in Ohio, the kind of place where everyone knows everyone and nothing ever happens. It was a cold November night, around 2 a.m., and Emily was walking home after a grueling shift at a 24-hour gas station just off the highway. The country road she took was dead silent, with only a handful of streetlights casting faint, flickering glows on the wet sidewalk, still slick from an earlier rain. She had her earbuds in, listening to a true crime podcast to keep the eerie vibe at bay, but halfway through her walk, she felt a sudden chill, like someone had breathed down her neck. Emily stopped, pulled out her earbuds, and held her breath. That's when she heard it, footsteps crunching on the gravel behind her, slow and deliberate, perfectly matching her pace. She spun around, heart pounding, but the road stretched empty under the dim streetlights, not a soul in sight. Thinking it was just her nerves playing tricks, she started walking again, faster now, her sneakers slapping the pavement. But the footsteps came back, closer, louder, like they were right behind her. Emily's stomach twisted as she broke into a jog, clutching her phone, but the sound kept up, relentless, like it was tethered to her shadow. Finally, she stopped dead in her tracks, her breath fogging in the cold air, and forced herself to turn around. About 20 yards away, under a buzzing streetlight, stood a man in a black hoodie, his face completely hidden in shadow. Emily shouted, asking who he was, her voice trembling. But he didn't answer, didn't move an inch. She blinked, and in that split second, he took one step toward her, then vanished into thin air, like he'd been swallowed by the night. Emily sprinted home, her keys shaking as she fumbled with the lock and barricaded herself inside, too scared to even glance at the windows. She sat in her living room, heart racing, replaying the moment in her head, wondering if she'd imagined it. The next morning, she told a coworker at the gas station, and the guy's face went pale. He said that road had a dark history. 10 years ago, a local man disappeared there, leaving his car abandoned with the keys still in the ignition. No one ever found him, and locals swear his ghost haunts that stretch, stalking anyone foolish enough to walk alone after midnight. Emily never took that road again, but she says, late at night, when her apartment is quiet, she sometimes hears those same footsteps just outside her door, slow and steady, like they're waiting for her to open it and step outside. The next story is from Jacob, a guy living in a quiet suburb outside Houston, Texas, in an old house that always felt a little off. The place had a creepy shed in the backyard, boarded up and locked with a rusty padlock, and Jacob avoided it because it gave him the worst kind of vibes, like something was watching from inside. One night, around 3 a.m., he woke up to a strange knocking sound, like someone was tapping on the shed door. It was soft but rhythmic, every 10 seconds, like a metronome that wouldn't quit. Jacob thought it might be the wind rattling the old wood, so he pulled the covers over his head and tried to ignore it. But the knocking kept going, steady and relentless, cutting through the silence of the night. He lay there for nearly an hour, hoping it would stop, but it didn't, and the sound seemed to grow louder, more insistent, like it was calling him. Finally, he couldn't take it anymore. He grabbed his flashlight, slipped on a hoodie, and crept outside, his breath visible in the chilly Texas air. As he approached the shed, the knocking stopped abruptly, leaving a heavy silence that made his skin crawl. He checked the padlock, still locked tight, no signs of tampering, no footprints in the dirt. Standing there, he felt a prickling on the back of his neck, like eyes were boring into him from the darkness. Then the knocking started again, this time from inside the shed, loud and desperate, like something was pounding to break free. Jacob's hands shook as he fumbled with the lock, his flashlight beam darting across the yard. He swung the door open, heart in his throat, and shined the light inside. Nothing but dust, cobwebs, and a few rotting crates, the air thick with the smell of mildew. The shed was empty. He slammed the door shut, bolted back to the house, and locked himself in, his pulse racing. But as he climbed into bed, the knocking started again, now right outside his bedroom window, sharp and deliberate, like whatever it was had followed him inside. Jacob flipped on every light, checked every corner, but found nothing, not even a shadow out of place. He stayed up until dawn, too scared to close his eyes. The next day, he asked his landlord about the shed, and the guy got quiet, almost nervous. He admitted the previous tenant disappeared years ago, last seen working in that shed, and no one ever found a trace of him. Jacob moved out a month later, but he swears that knocking sound is still with him, echoing in his dreams, like it's waiting for him to go back. Our final story comes from Sarah, a college sophomore in California, living in a cheap apartment just off campus in a rundown building with creaky floors and peeling paint. The place had a locked basement door at the end of the hall, always bolted shut, and Sarah never paid it much mind until one night, while studying late for midterms, she heard a faint giggle, like a child's laugh, coming from somewhere below her apartment. It was so soft, she thought it was her imagination, maybe her tired brain playing tricks. But then it came again, clearer, almost playful, echoing up through the floorboards. She paused her music, straining to listen, and the giggle sounded closer, like it was right beneath her. Sarah called her roommate to check, but by then it stopped, and her roommate heard nothing, saying it was probably just the old pipes settling. Sarah tried to brush it off, telling herself it was nothing, but the next night, the giggling returned, louder now, mixed with a scratching sound like tiny nails scraping against wood, coming from the basement door down the hall. Her heart raced, but she told herself it was just rats or the building creaking in the wind. She stayed up, trying to focus on her textbooks, but the sounds kept coming every 10 minutes or so, like something was testing her patience. By the third night, Sarah was a wreck, jumping at every creak in the apartment. She couldn't take it anymore. She grabbed her phone, turned on the flashlight, and marched to the basement door, her hands shaking as she stood in front of it. She yelled, asking who was there, her voice echoing in the empty hallway. The giggling stopped, and for a moment, the silence was deafening, heavier than anything she'd ever felt. Then, a small voice whispered through the crack under the door, soft and childlike, saying she should come down and play forever and ever. Sarah stumbled back, her phone nearly slipping from her hand, and ran to her room, locking the door behind her. She didn't sleep that night, her mind racing with images of what might be down there. The next morning, she called her landlord, who got strangely quiet when she mentioned the basement. He admitted that years ago, a kid went missing in that building, last seen playing near the basement door, and the police never found them, not a single clue. The story faded into rumor, but tenants still whispered about it. Sarah packed her bags and moved out within a week, crashing with a friend until she found a new place. But she says some nights, when it's dead quiet, she still hears that giggle in her head, soft and playful, calling her name like it's waiting for her to open that door. That's all for tonight's stories, but the darkness is still out there. Your own creepy experiences are begging to be shared. If you've ever heard a strange noise, seen a shadow move, or felt something you can't explain, send your story to us via email or drop it in the comments below. Who knows, your story might be the one that keeps everyone awake next time. Thanks for listening, and sleep tight.